Today, we are diving into a book that absolutely sent shockwaves through philosophy and literary theory. It's called Of Grammatology by Jacques Derrida. Now, it's definitely a challenge, but I promise you, it's one of those books that will completely change how you think about something as simple as the written word. But let's start with a quick question. Imagine you have a spoken promise from a friend versus a signed written contract. Which one feels more authentic, more immediate, more, well, real? For centuries, believe it or not, Western philosophy had a very clear answer to that, and it's probably not the one that would hold up in court today. So, to understand that really surprising answer, we've got to look at a bias that's been baked into Western thought for thousands of years. It's this deep, deep preference for speech over writing. So, for the longest time, the thinking went like this. Speech was seen as pure presence. The speaker is right there. Their thoughts are flowing directly into sound, right into your ears. It was seen as the real deal, authentic, the origin of meaning. Writing, on the other hand, that was seen as a kind of second-hand thing. It signifies an absence, right? The writer isn't there. It's just a copy, a representation of that original, purer, spoken word. And this wasn't just some fuzzy idea floating around. I mean, look at this quote from the incredibly influential linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. He just puts it right out there. For him, and for so many others, writing's only job, its sole purpose, was to be a picture of speech. It really had no life of its own. But then, along came a philosopher who was ready to flip this entire tradition completely on its head. So let's get into Derrida's really radical idea. In 1967, Jacques Derrida published this very book, Of Grammatology. And in it, he basically argued that this whole view of writing, as this kind of sad fall from the full presence of speech, was a massive, fundamental mistake, one that had basically blinded philosophy for centuries. Derrida even gave this bias a name. He called it logocentrism. It's the belief that the logos, the word, and specifically the spoken word, is the absolute center, the origin of all meaning. And his entire project in this book was to take that idea apart, piece by piece. So how in the world did he do that? Well, the best way to get a grip on Derrida's method, which he famously called deconstruction, is just to see it in action. And his most famous target in Of Grammatology was the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. See, Rousseau's work is just filled with these kinds of pairs, these binaries. He's constantly setting up what he sees as a pure, natural origin, something like passion, or the warm south, or speech. And then he introduces some outside force that comes in to corrupt it or supplement it. Things like need, or the cold north, or, you guessed it, writing. And this brings us right to the heart of Derrida's whole argument. He calls it the logic of the supplement. And this is where he makes this just brilliant move, taking Rousseau's own logic and turning it right back on itself. Okay, here's how it works. Step 1, Rousseau sets up an origin, let's say speech, and he claims it's perfect and complete all on its own. Step 2, he then says some outside force, like writing, comes in to add to it, but also kind of pollutes it. But then, and this is the genius part, Derrida reads Rousseau so closely that he reveals a huge twist, that supposedly pure origin was never pure to begin with. It always needed that so-called supplement just to work in the first place. And that's the whole game changer. The supplement, the thing that was supposed to be secondary, external, and afterthought, was actually there from the very beginning, already inside the origin. And just like that, the neat little line between speech and writing, between what's authentic and what's a copy, it completely falls apart. The whole hierarchy just collapses. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a pretty clever philosophical argument, but why should I care? Well, the impact of this book was absolutely massive, and it reached way, way beyond the dusty halls of academia. Think about this. The year 1967 was just unbelievable for Derrida. In that one year, he published Of Grammatology alongside 2 other major books. I mean, he instantly cemented his reputation as one of the most important thinkers of his generation. This book really became a foundational text for deconstruction. What that means is it gave people a powerful new tool, a new way to question all sorts of assumed natural hierarchies, not just speech over writing, but things like man over woman, nature over culture, reason over emotion. It gave people a method to look at their own world and ask, hey, what's being treated as the original here and what's being pushed to the side is just a supplement? Because ultimately, Derrida's work isn't just about old books. It's a lens for looking at our own world, right now. The question of grammatology really leaves us with is this. What are the unspoken rules, the hidden hierarchies that shape the way you think and work and live every single day? What have you just accepted as natural that might actually be a system just waiting to be deconstructed?